Celtics Beat is brought to you by Prizepicks.
Hey everyone, this is Celtics Beat. Welcome to summer. That's right. We are late into June, and yet the NBA season, it is not over. We have got a game 7 of the NBA Finals between the Thunder and Pacers to talk a little bit about. A Lakers sail those followers. And of course, who is going to move for the Boston Celtics this offseason with, remember, free agency and trades and the draft and all that stuff right around the corner, and the uncertainty of Jason Tatum's injury. Sort of, I don't know, confusing what next year is going to look like in a lot of different ways as it relates to your favorite Boston Celtics. And, I suppose we haven't really talked about this on the show either, Evan Valenti. Austin Ainge has left to go work with Dad in Utah. That's another thing that we can explore as well. I am Adam Kaufman, our special guest today, a frequent contributor to the program. We always love when he joins us. Steve Bulpett, again, Heavy.com, who wrote a piece just recently as well that you should check out over on Heavy, and it is all about that offseason potential, offseason movement, and exclusive with an NBA executive. Had a lot to say about the Celtics future as it relates to Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Al Horford, Luke Kornet, you name it. Steve, how are you?
Living the dream.
We've got, it's the Celtics would be dreaming of banner 19 and a second consecutive championship right now, if not for a range of things. And look, I'm not going to make the excuse and point to the Tatum injury or Brown not playing at full health, obviously, Porzingis. And I mean, there were a lot of guys for Boston that were banged up. Fact of the matter is, though, bad habits, as you've alluded to, and things that you've written in the past, and just breakdowns and poor play. I mean, that was what the bottom line, the whole thing for the Boston Celtics. Did it to themselves, their own worst enemy in a lot of different ways. Before we talk about Boston, a couple of things. One, we thank everyone out there for watching, listening, wherever you are finding us, be it Celtics Beat in podcast form, wherever you get your pods, or obviously subscribing on the YouTube channel, CLNS, the All Access page, specifically where you can find Celtics Beat. We thank you for joining us here. A lot of great NBA insiders, national and local, have joined us of late, Steve being the latest. Steve, let's talk about these NBA Finals, though, because there is no world in which I really believed the Pacers were going to put up a legitimate fight against the Thunder. I thought they'd be interesting, definitely win a game, maybe two. Forcing a game 7 pre-series sounded insane to me. And even going into game 6, with everything that we heard and was to be believed, Rick Carlisle and others, about Tyrese Halliburton and his injury and what he was expected to look like in game 6, I thought this thing was going to wrap up in Indiana. But instead, a dominating performance by the Pacers to force this game 7, and now it's either going to be Oklahoma City or Indiana on Sunday, winning the city's first NBA championship. And this has been, I hope people have not fed into the ratings and all that garbage and just watched as basketball fans, because this series has been exhilarating.
Well, to your earlier point, the fact that I have a roof over my head now makes me happy. It's kind of explains why I'm not a betting person. Because if I had, I would have bet the house, on OKC. The only gambling I do nowadays is occasionally if I ever fly Spirit Air. Yeah, I didn't see a world where this could happen. And it was nothing. It's not a slight on the Pacers at all. It's basically I just saw OKC and their defense and how committed they were to defense and their physical abilities, took it to a different level, being able to switch everything, all those things. But it's weird. It's like you saw the Celtics at times this year, get taken to late in the game or even lose to a quote unquote lesser team because all of a sudden, well, I guess you could, point to their elimination. The other team, your opponent starts making a move on you and you become like, wait, this isn't supposed to happen. And you get a little flustered. And I think the Thunder is a little surprised to be in this position. They thought they were going home with the trophy, not with the game 7 to play.
one of the things that I find interesting is to look at this Thunder team through a Celtics lens, because that's where Celtics beat. That's what we do. And the one thing I keep coming back to all the time is, Kaufman, I've texted you this constantly. They got the Celtics won last year because you never guarantee to get back. We've talked about this with a couple of different people over the past couple of weeks. Matt Moore and Dan Devine, our most two recent episodes. And I keep coming back to this because if Oklahoma City does not win Game 7, to have the best point differential in the history of the league for one season, to dominate like they did with a 68-14 in the regular season, to have that kind of regular season, to come up short. I mean, I'm quickly reminded of the 73-9 Warriors who unfortunately didn't win that year. But there's a lot of criticism that's going to come Oklahoma City's way if they don't win this thing on Sunday, that Boston spared themselves by going the whole way here. So I look at this through a Celtics lens, and it's like we can almost breathe a little easier, Steve, as Celtics guys, because they did go all the way last year and they had to deal with this, what I would assume is this overwhelming sense of, wow, we really blew this. I cannot believe Oklahoma City did not win this thing. Is there something to be said for that? Something to take away from that because of how hard it is to win a championship every single season?
It's hard to win mainly because of the opponents. I think in the case of the Celtics, losing in the finals in 03, losing to Miami. Were those the opponents or themselves? The Warriors were surprised at the way they were able to bully the Celtics, to get under them like that, to get into them physically, and the effect it had on the Celtics. So, I think there should be regret with the Celtics for those 2 years they didn't. This year, similar. But let's get to this point here, which I think people fail to look at or discuss enough. And that's that you have regular season basketball and you have playoff basketball. And they are two different animals. And when you kind of be a little wary of a team that's blowing people out all the time, because all of a sudden you saw the Celtics in the series against New York, they're up by a billion, and all of a sudden it becomes a tight game. And what do you do then? What are you used to doing then? And they didn't have that at the ready, it wasn't in there. It wasn't prominent enough on their computer chip. And that's what happens. You've got to be ready to play playoff basketball. And in the NBA over the years, more than any other league or sport, the better team pretty much will always win a 7-game series. But that isn't the case quite so much. I mean, in hockey, a team with a hot goalie can bounce the best team. It happens. But with the prominence of the three-point shot, and with teams getting used to blowout wins during the regular year, all of a sudden the teams at the top, might have some vulnerabilities that you would think in the past they wouldn't have had. I mean, we've had the three-point shot since the early 80s, but it wasn't as prominently used. So, I remember Greg Popovich talking a couple of years ago about these wild mood swings in the NBA with games and teams during a season, going through winning streaks, losing streaks. He said it's a three-point shot. If you get into a little team-wide slump for a bit, or just a couple of key players aren't hitting them for a few games, that drags you into, overthinking and screws up, everything.
No, to your point, I mean, this whole conversation about error we don't need to have, but like Larry Bird attempted 2.5 3-pointers per game throughout his career, if that, 2.3, something like that. Derek White takes like 9 now. So, so to compare one of the great shooters ever, and Derek White is a very good shooter, but it just speaks to, where we are in this era of basketball. So for sure, and we say it all the time, we've been saying it for years, if healthy at least, talent generally wins out, which I guess kind of brings me to this. There was a exchange I was watching on Twitter with our guy Greeny from Barstool. Somebody had asked him, how would this be one of the greatest chokes in NBA history? And see, he was contending that point. And Dan wrote 68 wins, as Ev brought up, highest scoring differential ever, the MVP, 2 All-NBA players, multiple All-NBA defenders, up 3-2, losing 2 straight, including a Game 7 at home to lose the title. Where's the argument that it's not? So my question for you is, like, 2 things can be true at the same time, right? In one sense, everything that Greeny said is accurate about what a kind of collapse and what could have been, what if situation for OKC if this doesn't happen for the Thunder on Sunday. But also this Pacers team, I've often referred to them as kind of lightning in a bottle. I'm not sure they get back. And yet, given that we are in the parity era, the East next year looks to be wide to hell open, especially not knowing what kinds of transactions are going to happen in the coming weeks. But also this Pacers team it's just really freaking good. It was in the conference finals, lost to Boston last year, now on the cusp of potentially winning a championship. Why do I not believe that they're going to be back there next year, or at least in the conversation to be back there next year? So this just might be a worst case scenario for OKC, seeing Indiana on the other side.
Yeah, it's, there's the progression of teams, in their life cycle, right? They're going for it, and guys are sacrificing, and they're doing all the dirty work, and they're, OKC's got great defenders and plays great defense. They give up threes, but any team's going to do that. But the Pacers they're also good defenders, but they're like relentless, right? And I think that changes things. It just alters the platform a little bit. So they can. I'm not sure OKC. You go through and you get to the point, and maybe in like the Celtics last year, you succeed, and you start thinking, well, that's our birthright. We're going to. Everyone's saying we're going to defend the championship, and we're favorites and all that, even though we're having our issues during the regular season. But you can't act like an elite team. You can't, puff out your chest and say we're elite. I remember I've said and written a billion times that it's like, no matter how good you are as a player, no matter how talented you are, no matter how fast you're going to make the trip to Springfield when it's your time, every possession, you still have to come down the floor, set hard picks, make hard cuts. You can't, hand $20 to a ball boy and say, "Hey, you go do that for me." And you've got to. So you can be elite, but you have to still act like a grunt, like a dirt dog, to get stuff done. And I think the Celtics fell a little bit victim to that this year. So, OKC, the Pacers, what are they going to be like next year if they win it? Remember a few years ago, the Suns had this great breakout season, and then all of a sudden the next year it all fell apart. They made a couple of moves that were a little, wonky with, maybe adding another extra point guard. But all of a sudden the guys next year are like, I was a key to making us win last year. No, I was a key. And they weren't necessarily having an argument in the locker room, but it was going on inside each player's head. And that, they just took a dive. So, you think, oh, this is great, but what's going to happen the next year, and how is it going to affect them mentally,
I look at both of these teams, and I'm trying to figure out, what can we learn from watching these two battle it out. And I look at Oklahoma City, I go back to game 5, and it's like, we talk a lot about ball movement and pace and all these things, but I just watched Oklahoma City with SGA and Jalen Williams just attack one-on-one, find their spots on the floor, hit tough shots, but a lot of isolation play, win a game, I thought, fairly easily. And again, I am simplifying what is a complicated thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, you have a Pacers team who last night, thanks to Tom Haberstroh, had over 100 more passes than the Thunder did. They've had over 700 passes in this entire series, and they play like 10 guys. So is there anything to be gained by looking at these two teams? Is there something to say, like, the future of basketball is here? I know Zach Lowe mentioned that he was talking to an executive about, one of the things that we have to look at now is front office people is stamina and how hard these guys play, for how long they play. We have to start factoring it into our equation when we're evaluating players. Is that what we're taking from this? Is that one-on-one basketball, that's what you really need? A guy at the end of the game that can get you a bucket, that's what you need? Is it do we need 10 guys? We need to get 9 guys to compete at this level now? Like, what's to be gained? What's to be learned from a team building standpoint watching these two teams play, Steve?
Well, having a guy that can beat a double team, a guy that can see the double team coming and make a play, shot clock running down, all those things, having that kind of talent and that kind of just inner strength, the earned confidence thing to make a play at a critical time, that's huge. No one's ever going to discount that. But over the course of a game, one of my favorite sayings, ball movement is life. And the other thing I've written quite a bit, it's become like a pet phrase, that the most dangerous thing about ISO basketball is that sometimes it works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, we'll just do that. And it's like, no, you can't just do that. It may win you a game. The Celtics game, the last Tatum game, 42 points. This is incredible. This is great. He's spectacular. The Celtics were behind by a bunch when he got hurt. It can work, but it can also take you away from what you do best. And it can give the defense, when they're not having to look over their shoulder for worry about cutters as much, it kind of allows them to rest. And so, yeah, I still think that ball movement, cutting, all those things are still the lifeblood of basketball. So drawing huge conclusions over the outcome of this series, saying whoever wins Sunday is going to be the blueprint for how it's done, and whoever loses is going to have to go back to the drawing board, I think is foolish. But it'll happen. It'll happen certainly on the talk shows and the talking head things, and it'll happen on podcasts like this, enlightening podcasts even like this. And it'll happen in front offices too, which is crazy. It's nuts. But people think, oh, we got to do that. Oh, we got to do what they do. No, you got to do what's best for the talent you have, and you've got to get guys motivated to do, the grunt work each and every night. Will the Pacers start thinking of themselves as stars if they win Game 7? Will they start, walking around and, hey, I'm, I don't know. We'll just find it when we need to. You can't do that.
Well, Steve, you brought up gambling before, and before we tell our friends about Prizepicks, of course, our sponsor here of this podcast, I'll ask the both of you, and then we'll transition into more Celtics-focused talk, because I'm sure plenty of people are ready for that. Who wins Game 7? It's this. The Thunder are heavily favored. I think 8.5-point favorites at home, but as we've come to learn in this series and in sports, it's one game. Anything can happen. heaven forbid, SGA or somebody get hurt in the first quarter, changes the whole complexion of the game. But let's just play the game if everybody stays healthy. Halliburton maybe even gets marginally healthier with a couple of days off. Who takes this game?
Go ahead, Ev.
Well, as someone who has a Pacers and 7 ticket, I'm going to say the Pacers. It was a very small wager, but it was to help me pay for a nice dinner. There's something about this team. All the comeback wins they've had. There's just something in the water. I don't. If you ask my head what I think the Thunder probably roll at home. They've been an incredibly good home team this year. They blow everybody out at home.
18-2 off of losses too.
Yeah, it's not looking good. But if you ask my heart, I get so much joy out of watching this Pacers team play that I just feel like for one game, Carlisle will have something that's a little different, a little out of the ordinary. It will stun maybe Oklahoma City for a few minutes. And as we've seen, that's really all the Pacers need to win a game. It all depends on, the health of Halliburton and see what he looks like after playing a good chunk of minutes in Game 6. But I like the Pacers and I love the story. So I'm going to stick with the Pacers in this one.
Steve?
Whenever I get asked about who wins, people that are into betting, I always say that the more you know about what's going on with the teams inside, etc., the more you realize how much there is to know and that you can't fully grasp. So it's tough. I mean, there are so many things that go into it. But the bottom line for me is always, I just look at it and say, okay, if each team plays to its max, who wins the game? And I would think in that case, it's Oklahoma City's game to win. But doesn't always happen that way, right? I mean, and that's why sports is, what it is from a popularity standpoint, right? I mean, you don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to see, Shakespeare in the park. And it's like, oh, Romeo and Juliet. Wait a minute. They both drink the poison at the end? What?
Hey, spoiler alert.
You're not, yeah. I mean, but in this case here, it's like, what's going to happen? The NBA got brought back to life by the Celtics and Lakers in the 80s because it was, hey, these teams really don't like each other. There's like a back and forth here, and they're not just out there running up and down the floor and saying, oh, it's just another game. They didn't like each other. And there was that vibe that went through it. And people, you don't know what's going to happen. So you tune in because, it's something just hit me. You guys, did you all watch Succession?
I didn't watch it. I need to. It's on the list. Haven't gotten there.
Yeah. Okay. So
highly recommend it.
Well, here's the thing.
Everybody loves it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, they love it. But think about, talk about going off the grid here. A couple weeks ago, I saw an episode. I watched another episode, and I realized this kind of sucks. It's like everyone's saying, bleep you, and can we use words here?
I mean,
anyway. They're using all the Byron bite me and this thing. And the reason you watched as it was going on is because you wanted to see what happened.
Sure.
But when you go back and look at it, Ed, take a look at a couple of episodes. I dare you. And it's like, these people are annoying. And this is
that's okay.
This episode is getting dragged out. And it's like, these side issues. And it's like, I don't want to be with this person. I don't want to be watching them on television right now.
Yeah.
But you stayed during the first run because you wanted to see who was going to win.
Yeah.
And seriously, go back and check it out.
I'll piggyback that these particular characters on that show they're not really they don't have a ton of redeeming qualities. People are terrible people. Like I think that's part of the charm of it. It's like we're rooting for certain people in this whole landscape of things. But if you were to ask us who one of these people, none of these people are cool. None of these people have any redeeming qualities. Well, they're all terrible people. And like there are certain moments where things are funny because like Tom and Greg are just hysterically stupid together. But it's a lot of like just terrible people doing terrible things to terrible people. It's
but it's like and the way they just dump on each other, and it's like, wait a minute, this is, passes for artistic television. I go, okay, well, I'll never have to look at those old episodes again. The one it cured me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so wherever that went from. Yeah, again, so that you're going to tune in because it's like someone's going to win this game in the championship at the end.
Sure.
And we don't know who. And
there's
that element of, conflict, two people going for the same thing.
Yeah, there's no better reality series than live sports, right? So I'll give you the Thunder. I say they win a close game. Don't cover the number, but and that's just I mean, probably smart money would be on the Thunder to win this thing by 10 plus points, but I'm choosing to believe at this point in time to have enough respect for the Pacers to say that they keep this thing close, keep it interesting, and don't just get dog walked in a game 7 with the way they have played here in this series. But we're gonna take a quick break. Tell you about our good friends, our partners over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Hear that again, 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks.
Kaufman, I've been talking about flex play this entire season. And we hit once again for game 5 in the NBA Finals, where I hit 3 out of 3, which was really nice. Got me a very nice dinner later for sure.
Sure.
$100 paid out 270 something basically, which was really nice. But with flex play, you can cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. Like for me, there's so much security in flex play, and thanks to Prizepicks, I feel secure every single time I play. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. It doesn't get any easier than that. Kaufman, we have one more basketball game.
Hey, real quick before this one more game, I can't help but notice you mentioned game 5.
Yeah, we don't talk about game 6, buddy.
Okay, all right. Yeah, okay.
I got a little too confident, confident out there. But hey, you win some, you lose some. Okay,
yeah,
sometimes
look,
you win big.
It's not a perfect world.
It's not, but that's all right. We gave it a shot. We're gonna give one more shot out there for one last basketball game on Sunday. I cannot wait. I've already done the research. Here's what I like. You talk to me and how you feel. Sure. I know you're gonna fight me on one of these. We're gonna go with Obi Toppin more than 5 rebounds. He's playing a lot of minutes, and in game 6 he was tremendous in that game. He's been basically 5 or more in every single game in this series. I like Obi Toppin there. We're going to go with Chet Holmgren, less than 15.5 points. Chet is definitely due for a game, but he's so young. This do-or-die Game 7 of the NBA Finals might be too big for him. And you and I always go back and forth about this, and you're always good to point out role players play way better at home. And with that, we're going to take the Aaron Wiggins more than 2.5 field goals made. And that's where we're going to pick up the role players always play better at home. We're going to pick that up there. Again, flex play. If you hit all 3 of them, it's 2.5x. If you hit 2 out of 3, it's 1.25x. And getting your money cannot be any easier. I use Venmo, literally the easiest thing ever to do that. You just link your Venmo account, bam, boom, done, all set. So if you win, like I did for game 5 there, got my money instantly. It was great.
So the Aaron Wiggins one would make me nervous. But what I will say to that is you look back at his game log. The minutes are up each of the last 2 games. Right. He's playing damn near half the game. Opportunities are there. There was a 4 for 10 at home, as you alluded to, and there was also a 1 for 4 in the most recent game. So at least the opportunity came with those minutes. And earlier in the series, when he went 6 out of 11 for his 18 points, which was a finals high for him, obviously, that was another home game. So I think, the head's in the right place. It's just a function of will there be enough minutes there for him and shots to go around in a potentially tightly contested game, which it had better be a tightly contested game. We'll talk plenty more about that, obviously. But like you said, getting your money couldn't be easier. In as little as 15 minutes, you watch the money roll into your account. Prizepicks, it uses Venmo. Couldn't be easier. Download the app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly after playing your first lineup for only $5. Again, download the Prizepicks app. Do it right now. The promo code is CLNS. You get $50 right away when you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Let's get back to the show. All right, let's get into a little bit more Celtics focus. I know it's been a lot of NBA Finals, sort of Celtics adjacent to start us off here with Steve Bulpett. You wrote something for Heavy.com just recently. Exclusive, Celtics need to keep Kristaps Porzingis, NBA Insider says. Now, for weeks on this show, Steve, we have been kind of going round and round because that's all you can do. It's looking at the money. It's this person's opinion, that person's opinion. Nobody really knows anything. And, the closest thing to it would be having like Brad Stevens or Mike Zarin on with us, who just wouldn't tell us anything. So nobody knows anything about what is going to happen. But again, we talk about smart money with the, betting on the Thunder. Smart money would say Celtics are going to make some significant changes this offseason in terms of looking to get under the various aprons. Obviously, does that mean Porzingis goes, Holiday goes, Horford goes, Kornet goes, Hauser goes? Could the Celtics be listening on Brown offers, on White offers? Like, we just don't know what this looks like. And you spoke with someone who, I think there are two sides of the coin. On the one side, it was, how do you get rid of any of these guys? These are guys that help put you over the top. But, then there's the financial side of things where, okay, I get it. I get how you could make some of these changes. But if you do offload this guy, that guy, you're still pretty good. Like, this is one of the things you talked about in the article. Like, you didn't put a number on it, but, maybe you're still a 45-win team, a top 6 team in the East, avoids the play-in tournament, and you're in the conversation, especially if in some weird, unpredicted reality that Jason Tatum returns, late in the year or for the postseason, and we actually do get him sooner than most of us believe that we will. So I guess I'm curious, especially with your kind of, informed conversations around the league. How does this play out? Do they look to, they're not rebuilding, obviously, but is this a retooling, a restructuring this offseason, and they're just sort of going into next year content knowing, hey, you know what, we're probably not going to be a contender. We're building 2 years out now for Tatum's return? Or do they attempt to, as close as possible, run it back?
There's a lot there. I'm sorry. Yeah. I keep checking my phone. I'm wondering where I am on the Knicks call list for coach. So, look, the thing that happens a lot is when you make moves, and the Celtics have made really good ones the last few years, last several. But in a case like this, where you're making a move for financial reasons, not basketball reasons, there's going to be a really good opportunity that you get to the point where you want what you had. And in the case, now it was, there was one exec that I quoted prominently in that last story. But there were other people I talked to as well. And it's like, they're like, yeah, we hope the Celtics make a bunch of moves because it's going to weaken them and it's going to make our chances better. But in the case of Porzingis in particular, like, he does stuff that makes other stuff work. Okay, like, he was limited in the playoffs last year, but he was certainly impactful when he played. And he opens the floor. I mean, 7 foot whatever, hits the three, protects the rim. That's stuff that's really hard to replace. And so unless the Celtics have medical knowledge that that this respiratory thing or whatever is going to be a problem down the line, it's hard to let a guy like that go. I think, and the financial penalties, it's like, what are you here for, And you can always sell it for 10 billion, even though you paid 6 for it. All those things factor in. And you look at the belief next year, even without Tatum. Look, it was at the 2018 Celtics got to Game 7 of the conference finals and blew a Game 7 at home against Cleveland, right? And they didn't have Kyrie Irving, and they didn't have Gordon Hayward, who was hurt in the first game of the year. So without, 40% of their starting lineup, they get to Game 7 of the conference finals. So, without Tatum next year, it hurts to lose a player of his abilities. But, you're still going to be a team that's going to be competitive. And you saw how the breaks went this year. What if the breaks go against other teams next year? Are you still involved in it? Are you still competing for something larger? And then Tatum comes back, potentially. So, yeah, I think they're going to make moves, and I think they're going to be moves that no one's going to be happy with in the present tense.
We're sort of in like uncharted territory with this CBA in terms of, again, team building against these apron penalties. And, there are other podcasts that will go into the minutiae of all this stuff. I think we kind of all have a decent idea of why this is. But it seems like Boston has an opportunity to be like the first team to try and reset under these new restrictions and rules and things. And we talked with Matt Moore 2 weeks ago about how, Denver wants to do this, but they can't because Jokic is the best player in the world. And as long as he's healthy, you kind of have to keep, trying certain things on the fringes of things, but they really need a hard reset to figure out what the next step is. Is there any, I'm trying to think of the right word here. Is there any temptation to be a little bold and say, look, everybody is going to have to eventually, like you look at the Magic, right? They just go get Desmond Bane. How long is that relationship going to last, considering you have Paolo that's going to need an extension at some point, and he's, however you feel about him, he's going to turn into one of the 2015 best players in the league probably, and threaten for all NBA stuff, and then enter a different stratosphere of contracts. Franz is not going to be inexpensive. Bane is not an inexpensive contract. Suggs is really good. They're going to have some hard decisions to make. Is there any value being the first one to say, let's be bold, let's reset the clock, but let's do that knowing that we have a smart front office and we have a good idea of what this team really needs to look like in 2 years?
Yeah, but it's hard to project. Look at the Celtics and look at the guys that have been major contributors. Okay, Jalen and Jason should be expected for picks that high. Doesn't always work out. You can look at the two guys that were drafted before them, before Tatum. And I realized Lonzo's was injury related. His career not being what he's wanted so far. Mm-hmm. But so those two guys, right? But Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, these guys are major contributors. And you've got to find it. And Drew Holiday, I still can't believe teams give him away, or the teams that have given him away over the years. Except for the only one I'll give a pass to is Portland, because they they were looking to get younger and they took a shot with Rob Williams. But these are guys that were available, not high picks. Guys that later on in their careers were there to be taken. But you have to identify those guys, right? And you can, look at the Knicks, the 5 picks for Mikal Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they now because of that trade? They want Giannis. They'd love to get Giannis to New York, or Kevin Durant. What do they have to give after you spent everything on Mikal Bridges? The Magic you're talking about, what they gave up for Desmond Bane. What do they have in their pocket to spend to improve beyond that? I mean, the Celtics, when they traded for Derek White, you can say people on the league thought they kind of overspent because Josh Richardson was good, and you were taking on this guy, and you gave up some stuff. But the Celtics identified, no, he's the guy. And if you quote unquote overspent in the moment, then if he's your guy and you believe that, and you're right, then it works, right? So you're going to have to do a whole lot of finding gems again if you're the Celtics and you get rid of Kristaps Porzingis and a Drew Holiday. You're going to have to really look hard to find those guys and have some luck too. And if it's a trade you're talking about that gets you something, then you've got to be, you've got to win those trades, and hope that someone will be willing to do something stupid for you. Brooklyn in 2013, Philadelphia making the trade of 1 for 3, those things you have to count on those things to happen. And it's kind of hard to count on that, right?
Well, or to assume that you're going to find, the next Derek White, the next kind of needle in a haystack that you deal Josh Richardson for. I mean, that's the dream, right? Is to, trade away whatever, some package of something that isn't overly significant to you, or to get off some money, ideally, whether that's in the form of Drew, Kristaps, whomever, you're offloading some money and you're bringing back a younger player or two in return that maybe hasn't, again, they're 22, 23, hasn't come close to maturing at their potential, and you can grow them within your system. And again, you see a future White in front of you, a guy that not only becomes a rotational player, but a valuable starter for you down the road. I don't know. I mean, that's the goal. I certainly trust in the Celtics front office. I don't know how you couldn't trust in the evaluations of Brad Stevens to date and Mike Zarin and making the money work. And, that different, we always, use Brad to kind of label it, but that team of people, it's not just Brad, obviously. But Ev, it's, these are the decisions, obviously, that need to be made this offseason. I'll ask, Steve, if you feel comfortable doing this, great. If you don't, that's fine. But I'll start with you, Ev. If you're looking at some of these guys that we've named, that we at least believe, we're entertaining the possibility that they could be gone. Again, it's Kristaps, it's Drew, it's Hauser, it's Horford, it's Kornet. We'll leave White and Brown out of it. How do you rank the most likelihood of this guy's gone onto most likely to stay?
I feel weird almost saying this, but I almost feel like Sam Hauser might have the most value of all those guys, in terms of the contract, what he does, what his role will be. I think a lot of teams look at him and say, yeah, we can use a guy who shoots 40% on mostly catch and shoot threes, plays pretty good defense for a guy that's known as a 3-point shooter primarily. The floor spacing you can provide. Again, the money is a huge issue here. He's not making a lot of money. I know a lot of people look at Drew Holiday as he's making a lot of money, but as Steve brought up, like the intangibles that guy brings to the table, you just can't appreciate until he plays for a team you watch a lot. Like, I love Marcus Smart to death, always will, but watching Drew Holiday last year do stuff, I was like, I can't believe I even had these two remotely, close to each other. Because what Drew does is different. And I'm not trying to bring down Marcus. He's a great guy, but what Drew does is a little bit different from what Marcus did, and it was a little bit more effective in bigger games. And the value of a guy like that to a team that's trying to really compete, I think, is huge. The one, and I, the Porzingis stuff is tough only because, and as Steve mentioned in his piece, when he's on the floor, the highs are unbelievable. I mean, again, the Celtics had points in 24 and in 25. They looked unbeatable when he's rolling and the team is rolling. Because it's like, how the hell are you going to stop Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown when they're all rolling? And, oh, yeah, there's this 7'3" guy that plays like a 2-guard sometimes. And if he's really on, he's got range out to 28, 30 feet. So, and protects the rim. But my only problem with that is, when the Celtics have really needed him, he's kind of been AWOL. He's been hurt, the sickness thing. It's all fluky, but it does matter because it happened. So if I had to rank them, Kaufman, I would say Hauser probably is the easiest one to move considering financials, considering his role. I'd put Holiday right after that. And then this, Porzingis thing I think is really tough and really interesting. And Steve made valid arguments like, why would you trade this guy because of what he can do when he's right? And the counter to that, and it's not like people don't understand this. The counter to that is, when he's right. The problem is the when is sporadic, and we have no idea when he's going to be really right again. We have no clue.
Yeah, I'd be, again, wary of anything with Porzingis because the nickname Unicorn, it kind of fits in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Because he can affect so much stuff. And again, if you have medical knowledge of what's going on with him, fine. But if you don't, like you need 3 guys to replace what he does, But I'd say the guy that's perhaps most like, well, let's put it here. The guy that is a potential move that wouldn't hurt you perhaps as much would be Hauser. And I'll say right now, I think Hauser is underutilized in a lot of ways. He goes to the hoop very well. He's got good mid-range, but his moves to the bucket, he doesn't do it that often because it's not what his job description is. But I think he's even better than what you've seen out of him. But the reason I think he would hurt the least, perhaps, is that you might have Baylor Shireman to step into that role. So, but when you get down to Horford and Kornet, even if you've got a healthy Porzingis, being able to go double big, Kornet inside, Porzingis outside, you've got so many options. And Horford, guys like Horford and Drew Holiday say, well, look at the stats. He didn't have a good game. And it's like, those 2 guys don't have good games, it means your team isn't playing the right way. Because if your team's playing the right way, guys like that know how to get open, know where to be, that facilitate things, they're going to get some numbers as well. And, I wrote years ago that when Al's first stint with the Celtics, when he was catching a lot of crap because, people were expecting more or wanting more, it's I think that Al Horford is the shibboleth. It's like if you get it, you see what he is. And if you don't see what he is, then you just don't get it. He's like the measuring stick for do you know the game?
Yeah.
And that sounds so awful and cocky to say.
No, but I think it's true. Like this goes back to his first era, run with the team before obviously he had left. It's the the talk radio, like there was a lot of average Al on sports talk radio, and we would counter that on this show by calling him all around Al, because respecting all the different ways that he can impact winning and all of that. Let me ask you this about Horford though, Steve. Do you feel like, especially at where he is at in his career, in his life, at his age, all of it, is it Celtics or bust? You know, is it return to the Celtics or retirement? Or do you think this is someone that will still look to move elsewhere to have another shot or two at a ring if he doesn't believe that's Boston?
I think it'll be a very tough call. The story I wrote on him a couple of months ago now, was it? When he basically came out and said, yeah, I'm going to keep playing. I want to keep playing anyway. And he really, really wants it to be Boston. He likes everything about the situation. But I don't know, when faced with the, if you can't play here, are you not going to play? Because I know he still wants to play basketball, but I think it'll be a hard decision for him to make. Where is that other place? I mean, he thought the world was going to be great when he went to Philadelphia, and that was just awful from the start because of Joel Embiid's weirdness and all that.
Yeah.
I remember going down to do a story on them on the way to a preseason game in Orlando. I stopped in Philadelphia to talk to him, and he basically said at that point there that if he'd have known the Celtics, that Kyrie was going to leave and Kemba was going to come in, he really probably would have stayed, So the situation means a lot to him. He's not just doing it for the dough. He took less money this time here. This last contract he's finished up. He ain't in it for the money,
right?
Entirely. He's not going to work for minimum wage and have to declare his tips. But, I think he still wants to play, and I just will find it that'll be an interesting thing. It'll be an interesting look into Al's psyche, what he chooses to do.
And as we've seen, he can still impact winning basketball games. I go back to watching that Lakers game. I think it was late in the year where he was targeted like the most that anybody's been targeted in a game in one-on-one situations between Luka and LeBron, and he held them both to like the lowest points per play in a single game being targeted like ever. It's like the guy's he's still unbelievably effective, impactful. He's smart. If you have the right locker room, he's tremendous for you. Like, it is going to be difficult for Horford to find that right place. And it hurts because like I want the right place to be in Boston, but at the same time, I just don't know if it'll look like that. I don't know if it's going to be the best place for like. Can Horford hang on for another year after this next year? Because it seems like Boston again. It will be trying to really right the ship for 2 years from now. I don't know. I all I'll say is I love Al Horford so much. I love watching him play. I do. If he ends up going somewhere, I want him to be a place where he has a legit shot to win a championship. And I'm just I'm not
maybe
sure
you should go back to Oklahoma City.
Well, I was thinking about that. As Steve was talking, I'm like, man, a team that could really, or like Indiana, like Al Horford could easily play for the two teams that are playing in the fight right now.
Sure.
It'd be effective. If you can tell me that if you replaced Al with Chet, that I think Chet's great. I think Chet's awesome, but I think Al could fit in similarly. I think with the way that the Pacers play, I know they're up and down, but Tony Bradley got minutes in Game 6.
Yeah, I'm not sure Al fits in OKC, but I definitely think if you had if the Pacers had Al Horford and didn't have Miles Turner, would they be a better team right now?
It's not been a good series for Turner or, even a great playoff run to begin with. So, you could make the argument.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
Turner's been great on defense, but he hasn't given anything offensively. It's been rough.
Well, then, but that's just I look. I think we all agree that what Horford can do for a team, but it's weird. And then look further down, like Kornet. Is he playing well because he's that good? Is he playing well because of the situation, because of what's around him?
Sure.
And those are things that have to be looked at. And what's he going to get? What are the offers going to be in the open market? Who sees what he does, and thinks it translates to what their team needs?
Before we wrap, because we've kept you here for a little while, want to at least acknowledge this pending Lakers sale. I joked followers earlier. You know, the Celtics announced they're selling, ultimately sell their team. Bill Chisholm, welcome to the group. And then all of a sudden, you know, Jeannie Buss and company are getting out of Dodge. Now, Buss, you know, Jeannie will stick around as governor for the foreseeable future. You know, I don't know if it's quite the same as Wick staying as governor for Boston, but she will continue to be involved. Just the Buss family is getting out, and that $10 billion valuation, which trumps Boston by almost double, is kind of insane to think about. But what were your reactions when you saw this story break? And what I don't know. I guess what does it mean for the NBA going forward? Do you think?
Well, I know Bill Chisholm is from Georgetown, Mass, but I was just picturing, like, if he was, from the city, from Southie or whatever, and he'd be looking at the Lakers sale saying, I just spent $6.1 billion and I got a bargain. And again, I always kind of blanch when they say that the team sold, that he paid $6.1 billion for the team. He's buying a percentage of the team based on a $6.1 billion valuation. So he doesn't have to come up with the $6.1 billion himself. So yeah, it's, and I think it's crazy to a degree, but it goes back to something we talked about earlier. This is reality programming, and although the TV numbers are down always, and people keep pointing to those numbers, and it's like, I think we need to drug test the people that talk about those numbers, because that ain't all who's watching these games. There's streaming, and there's the different platforms that the games get presented on and get consumed on. That's so there's still value in these teams. And I remember David Stern, when the owners would come bitch at him back in the days, the 90s and whatever, this is killing me. And he would tell them, hey, you can sell your team and make a profit of multiples what you paid for it. So, he probably shut up some rich people that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting that the two pillars of the league, between Boston and LA, you have a gajillion championships won. A lot of the greatest players of all time have played for these particular franchises. Both of them are up for grabs, and it's like kind of both up for grabs in a really kind of like down low on the DL kind of way. Like all of a sudden out of nowhere, the Lakers are for sale and they already have a top bidder. Like it's already done. Like Boston comes off a championship. It's like, yep, the team's for sale and we'll see what it looks like. I can't believe that these two things have happened so quickly without any like real warning at all. Maybe with Irv Grossbeck, him being that old, is like, yeah, maybe like, okay, maybe we should have seen this coming. But this Lakers thing came out of nowhere.
That would required knowing Irv's involvement with the Boston Celtics, which most people didn't.
Oh no, yeah, but we always knew that he was the money behind the team, didn't we? I mean, come on.
I don't think that was. I mean, I'm not saying you didn't know, but I don't think that was widely disseminated information. I don't think most people.
Irv was the money behind it, the big money behind it, and that was him. I think it was looking at estate planning and things like that, and saying, let's be smart about this. This is when you're a family that has that kind of money, it's like it's kind of a nice toy to have, but in terms of as an investment, it's probably outlived its usefulness, and you start to get worried about what comes next. And estate planning, that was a big part of it. But it's I always think of weird stuff. I'm Bill Chisholm from Southie. No, but I'm picturing Knicks fans looking at the Lakers being sold and the Celtics being sold and saying, why can't, to paraphrase Bob Lavelle, why can't we get owners like that?
Right.
Owners who sell.
Yeah, they've been done with Dolan there for a long time.
Yeah, Dolan is. We just need Dolan to invest in the band a little bit heavier than he is, and just roll with what's it, JD and the Straight Shots. Is that the name of the band that he's in? That like opens for the Eagles or something like that. Like it's really, it would take a monumental occurrence, I think, that to happen. I just find it interesting that these two things have happened relatively out of nowhere, and it's just kind of like interesting to me because as soon as any team really goes for, there's a lot of like, oh, they could be up there eventually, and then you start hearing rumblings of who might be involved, and these are just sort of blindsided me. I'm a little stunned by that. Kaufman, we haven't really talked about this at all, about the fact that the Lakers are for sale and seemingly again.
Well, we didn't. I mean, we didn't know. I don't think anybody knew they were for sale. I think this wasn't like the Celtics announcing we're for sale and like get your bids in. It takes months and months and months. All of a sudden it was out of nowhere. The Buss family owns the Lakers to we've been sold to X. Like these, not X like Elon, but we've been sold to this person and this group, and like so, without reading a whole bunch of backstories about it, it would seem to be they, Godfather-esque Steve, like this new Lakers group came in with an offer that Jeannie Buss couldn't refuse. And, how could she, obviously at $10 billion? It does make you wonder, though, like you made the joke about the bargain, if the Lakers were sold first, and I don't know if it would have been 10, maybe it would be a little bit less. What would Boston have gone for? It wouldn't have been more. I realize, there are a lot of things that come into play, including the Lakers owning their own building as opposed to, renting from the Bruins like the Celtics do. But would that 6 have been 7? Would have been 8?
It's, a lot of it's the entire package of what you get when you buy a team, right? I told you I was doing a lot of digging through and cleaning out some stuff here. And I came across the Celtics, the prospectus that Wick and those guys put out when they were getting investors. And I wrote at the time in the paper that this new ownership group wanted to build its own arena. And Will McDonough wrote that Will and I were good, but he wrote, this is crazy. This is, whatever, and just like dumped all over that. And I got a call from the guy that was, I think it was Creswick still, heading the Garden, saying he apologized for that. And I go, you didn't write it. You go, but he knew it was true because it was in the prospectus. They were going to build their new arena. So, like, what do you get? A lot of these teams now, you're seeing it in these arena and stadium projects. Atlanta, the Braves move out to Gwinnett and build it's called the Battery. It's not just the stadium, it's the development around it. Nationals in DC, not just the stadium, it's the development around it. And all these projects, the Celtics are tenants. They've got a great deal, but it's like, what do you get along with this? And what are your local TV contracts and radio contracts and things like that? So I'm not sure the Celtics would have, approached that kind of money in any circumstance. But the Knicks are in a good spot because the guy owns the arena, the team, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, you talk about Dolan being in a band and all this here, and does firing Thibodeau is his version of his band playing Coachella? I think that's a pun that should get me like 5 to 10, maybe minimum security prison, but still,
or at least a whole bunch more likes on this show on the
limited possibility for parole. Yeah.
We do want to thank everyone for tuning in for another edition of Celtics Beat. Again, if you subscribe via the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, leave a review, a rating, 5 stars, always appreciated, obviously. If you like to watch the videos, and I mean, why wouldn't you want to see these 3 mugs here? Check out the CLNS YouTube page, the CLNS All Access page as well for
A lot of great Celtics content, this show, other shows. We are there for you on a weekly basis, even here in the off season. So we do thank you very much. Check out Steve's work, heavy.com. Steve, of course, on Twitter at Steve B. Hoop. And Evan Valenti. I am Adam Kaufman. Steve, appreciate the time, sir. We always enjoy it.
My message to people that are watching this, turn it off, go to the beach now.
It's nice outside. Take advantage of that weather. Avoid the 100-degree days, but
go to the beach then too. Yeah, it's definitely when you want to go to the beach.
Maybe use an umbrella, extra sunscreen, whatever it is. Summer's here, guys, and there's still one more basketball game left. Looking forward to it, and the draft is rapidly approaching as well. Stay with us. Celtics Beat is with you year-round.